On board, more than 4,000 sailors are preparing for possible escalation as tensions with Iran rise. Fighter jets sit armed on the flight deck. Radar systems scan the horizon. Weapons crew drill for scenarios they hope never happen. And deep inside the ship, below the roar of the jet engines and the thunder of the catapults, one man is racing a different kind of clock. Because today, just like yesterday, and it will be tomorrow, he has to produce over 16,000 meals. Not this week, not this month, today. This ship is the USS Gerald R. Ford, the most advanced aircraft carrier ever built. It can launch jets faster than any carrier before it. It can generate more electrical power than a small city. It can stay at sea for months without refueling. But none of that matters if the crew doesn't eat. Every pilot climbing into an FA-18, every mechanic working below deck, every radar operator staring at a glowing screen at 3 a.m, they all depend on him. While diplomats argue and headlines talk about military posturing, his battlefield looks very different. Stainless steel counters, industrial ovens the size of small cars, freezers stacked floor to ceiling, timers going off every few seconds. If even one meal service fails, fatigue spreads fast. Concentration drops, morale cracked, and on a warship operating near a potential conflict zone, that's not a small problem. Here's the part that most people don't realize. When a carrier shifts into higher alert status, flight operations increase. That means longer shifts. That means more sailors awake at odd hours. That means more food at unpredictable times. There is no pause button. So while the world watches the fighter jets on deck, there's another operation running nonstop below them. A logistical marathon that never makes the news. And at the center of it stands the man responsible for feeding a floating city in the middle of a rising global tension. How do you even begin to manage something that big? To understand the pressure on him, you have to first understand the scale of the city he's feeding. The USS Gerald R. Ford isn't just a ship. It's a floating city. 1,106 feet long, rising higher than a 20-story building from keel to mast. Beneath the deck, 2 nuclear reactors generate enough power to run for more than 20 years without refueling. It carries a full air wing, strike fighters, electronic warfare jets, early warning aircraft, helicopters. In surge conditions, aircraft launch every 20 to 25 seconds using its electromagnetic catapult system. Faster launches, faster recoveries, higher tempo. And that tempo isn't theoretical. With tensions rising in the region and U.S. forces repositioning closer to the Middle East, the carrier strike group operates as both a deterrent and a message. Destroyers form a protective screen. Supply ships shadow from a distance. Submarines move somewhere below the surface, unseen. All of it designed to project power. On paper, the crew numbers around 4,500 sailors when the air wing is on board. But numbers on paper don't show the real complexity. 4,500 different schedules, 4,500 different caloric needs, 4,500 people rotating through a non-stop 24-hour cycle. Some wake at 0400. Some don't leave their stations until sunrise. Some work in engine rooms that feel like furnaces. Others sit in dark combat information centers, staring at glowing screens for hours at a time. There is no single meal time on a carrier like this. When flight operations surge, food demand surges with it. When alert levels rise, stress climbs, and so does exhaustion. Long shifts burn energy fast, and energy has to be replaced. The ship can project power across continents, it can launch strikes hundreds of miles inland, but before any aircraft even leaves the deck, before any radar locks onto a target, someone has to make sure that breakfast is ready. And that's where the real challenge begins. Because feeding 4,500 sailors at sea isn't just about cooking, it's about timing, logistics, and zero margin for error. So, what does 16,000 meals actually look like? It means breakfast starts before most of the ship even wakes up. Around 0200, lights snap on in the galley. Dough is rolled, eggs are cracked by the hundreds, oatmeal, fruit, trays of bacon, prepared in quantities that would overwhelm most restaurants in a week. By 0600, the first wave of sailors moves through the serving line. But that's just the beginning. Because breakfast isn't just one sitting. It stretches for hours. Pilots eat before briefings. Deck crews grab food between aircraft launches. Night shift sailors walk in just as others are finishing. By the time lunch prep begins, thousands of plates have already been cleared. Now, multiply that cycle 3 main times a day, plus midnight rations, plus boxed meals for watch stations, plus extra trays during high-tempo flight ops. 18,000 portions doesn't mean 16,000 separate recipes. It means controlled mass production without losing consistency. Thousands of chicken breasts, all cooked evenly. Hundreds of pounds of rice timed to finish together. Industrial kettles stirring gallons of soup at once. And every tray has to be safe. Temperature logs are checked constantly. Storage areas are monitored. Fresh produce is rotated with strict discipline. Freezers are stacked like warehouse shelves, labeled and tracked down to the day. Then there's the math. Each sailor can burn between 3,000 and 4,000 calories during long shifts. Flight deck crews working under jet exhaust can burn even more. That means high-protein meals, heavy carbs, constant hydration. He doesn't just cook, he calculates. If the air wing increases sorties tomorrow, he adjusts portions today. If bad weather delays resupply, he stretches ingredients without lowering quality. Because once the ship is underway, there's no quick grocery run, and tomorrow, at 0200 hours, it all starts again. If you've walked into the galley for the first time, you wouldn't think kitchen, you'd think factory. Steel everywhere, steam rising from industrial kettles, ventilation systems roaring nonstop. The space is divided into zones, prep stations, baking sections, hotlines, scullery, storage, each one moving with mechanical precision. This is where he operates. The ovens aren't like the kind you see at home either. They're double-stacked convection units that can handle entire racks of food at once. Tilt skillets the size of bathtubs cook hundreds of servings in a single batch. Dough mixers churn out enough bread to feed a small town. And everything is bolted down. When the ship rolls, equipment has to stay in place and stay stable. Speed matters, but control matters more. Serving lines are built for volume. Sailors move through in steady waves, trays sliding across stainless counters. Behind the line, his team refills trays before they run dry. No gaps, no slowdowns. Then there's sanitation. After every major meal, cleaning crews move in fast. Surfaces are scrubbed, floors are washed, waste is separated and processed according to strict naval regulations. On a closed system like a carrier, hygiene isn't optional, it's survival. Cold storage sits deeper inside the ship. Walk-in refrigerators packed tight, freezers stacked floor to ceiling, every item labeled, dated, logged. Inventory isn't guesswork, it's tracked daily. And above all of this, flight operations continue. Jets launch, arresting cables slam against the deck, the ship vibrates under full power. But down here, the rhythm never breaks. Because while pilots focus on targets and commanders study maps, this part of the ship focuses on something just as critical: keeping 4,500 sailors fueled, safely, efficiently, without fail. And he's the one making sure that the machine keeps running. Out here, food doesn't arrive at a loading dock. It arrives by helicopter, or by cables stretched between two moving ships in open water. When the carrier needs fresh supplies, it conducts what the Navy calls underway replenishment. A supply ship pulls alongside, both vessels moving at the exact same speed. Lines are fired across the gap. Cargo pallets slide over the ocean on tensioned cables while crews guide them in. All while the sea keeps moving. Fresh produce, frozen meat, dry goods stacked in crates, everything timed down to the hour. Because once the transfer window closes, that's it. He watches those deliveries closely. Before the pallets even reach storage, his team inspects for quality. Bruised fruit gets separated, expiration dates are checked, temperatures are verified, nothing questionable makes it into circulation. Then comes the real puzzle. Storage space is limited. You can't just stockpile endlessly. Freezers have capacity limits, refrigeration has to balance airflow, dry storage must remain organized or chaos spreads fast. He plans menus around what's available, not around preference. If resupply is delayed by weather or operational shifts, fresh ingredients are stretched carefully. Frozen reserves become more important. Shelf-stable goods move forward in rotation. And sometimes the mission changes overnight. If regional tensions spike and flight operations jump to a high tempo, sailors burn more energy. Meal service expands, snack lines are extended, coffee consumption skyrockets. He adjusts again. More protein, more carbs, faster turnaround. There are no weekends at sea, no holidays off. Even celebrations, birthdays, promotions, holidays require coordination inside a combat-ready environment. Yet somehow, cakes still appear, special meals still happen. Because feeding the crew isn't just logistical support, it's stability. And stability keeps a warship steady, even when the world outside isn't. Then came the order that changed everything. For months, this carrier had been running on routine. Sorties, meals, sleep cycles, inventory reports, all basically on autopilot. But now, the strategic picture was shifting faster than anyone down in the galley could have even predicted. Over Washington, officials were debating Iran's nuclear activities and how far Tehran would go in resisting pressure from the US and its allies. As negotiations faltered, a decision came down. Another aircraft carrier strike group was heading towards the Arabian Sea to strengthen the naval presence near Iran's coast. That puts this strike group, already operating near potential conflict, at the center of a much wider geopolitical spotlight, and instantly raised the tempo of operations. Pilots flew more sorties. Radar sweeps increased, destroyers tightened their screens, every sailor on board felt the heightened alert. Down below in the galley, the impact was immediate. Daily meal cycles weren't enough. Portions had to be recalculated on the fly. Midnight rations became regular rations. Stock that was planned to last days needed to stretch weeks. Every ounce of food, every tray served, became part of keeping the crew functional. Awake, fed, and focused, under conditions they knew could erupt at any moment. No one knew if diplomacy would hold, but out here, readiness wasn't abstract, it was measured in meals planned, supplies stretched, and long nights that refused to end. In the space between diplomacy and conflict, this quiet world in the bowels of a warship had suddenly become something far more urgent. After weeks at sea, something changes. The routine becomes heavy, the steel walls feel closer, news from home travels slower than emotions do, Sleep gets shorter, tempers get thinner, and that's when food stops being just fuel. It becomes comfort. On rough days, when the carrier cuts through high swells and the deck tilts under your boots, even cooking becomes harder. Trays slide, liquids shift, timing gets disrupted, but meal service still has to hit its window. Because when sailors walk in exhausted, they're not thinking about strategy or geopolitics. They're thinking about something warm, something steady, something normal. He knows that. A surprise taco night, fresh cookies at midnight watch, a holiday meal that reminds someone of home. Small gestures, big impact. Studies inside the military consistently show morale links directly to performance. Low morale leads to mistakes, and mistakes on a flight deck can be catastrophic. So when tensions outside the ship rise, he watches morale inside the ship even more closely. If portions start coming back untouched, something's wrong. If lines get quieter, energy is dropping. He reads the room without ever stepping onto the bridge. Sometimes it's built with a hot tray and 5 minutes of normal in the middle of a controlled chaos. If this carrier ever moves from deterrence to action, everything speeds up. Launch cycles tighten. Briefings compress. Sleep becomes optional. And in that kind of environment, physical performance decides outcomes. Pilots pulling high G-forces need steady energy. Flight deck crews moving ordnance need strength and focus. Technicians troubleshooting electronics at 2 o'clock in the morning need mental clarity. That doesn't happen on caffeine alone. It happens because someone planned balanced meals days in advance. Because protein was thawed at the right time. Because hydration stations stayed full. Because calories matched workload. In a potential conflict zone, readiness is measured in small margins. A distracted sailor can miss a signal. A fatigued crew member can make a costly mistake. Nutrition quietly protects against both. He may never step into a briefing room about regional strategy. He'll never appear in satellite images or news reports. But if the ship's tempo explodes overnight, his operation expands with it instantly. More trays, faster rotations, longer hours. Because combat power doesn't just come from jets and missiles. It also comes in the simple fact that 4,500 sailors are fed, focused, and ready for whatever comes next. So, while headlines focus on missiles, diplomacy, and rising tension near Iran, remember this: a carrier strike group only works if every system works. And one of those systems is a galley running 24 hours a day, producing more than 16,000 meals without stopping. He doesn't launch aircraft, he doesn't command destroyers, but without him, none of it moves. If you were deployed for 8 months at sea, what meal would keep you going? Thanks for watching Military Legends. Let's keep sharing these stories from the sea and create more respect for the men and women who live and serve aboard ships around the world. If you value real stories like this one, like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.